What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast. We got another Thursday Q&A for you on a Masters weekend. So we'll dive into that, our hot takes on who we think is going to win first. But we got 4 questions for you, questions that clients have asked, people within the Mindful Muscle Facebook group have asked. And so we're going to answer those for you guys right here. But Jake, who you got for the Masters this weekend?
For the Masters, my number one pick has got to be Scotty Scheffler, just because mainly the last golf tournament I watched was the Ryder Cup last year, and I was really impressed when I saw him play John Rahm. He played super well throughout the Ryder Cup, so I think he can play in big moments. Won his first tournament this year, and he's just playing really good golf right now. So that's my pick for the Masters.
Yeah, I'd love to say Tiger Woods, but I'm not going to say Tiger Woods. It'll be cool to watch him.
Pretty long shot.
Yeah, I think Justin Thomas is someone who hasn't won yet, and he just is always around that top 10, and I think he's going to do it. He's just one of those, he's like a little tiny guy, and it kind of makes me want to root for him even more. I don't know why. I just watch him play, and he's got those little fancy golf shoes he always wears, kind of the tuxedo style.
Yeah, he's very fiery.
Yeah, he's very fiery. So I think he wins. There's a ton of rain last night, and so it'll be wet. I got some golf dialed up this weekend, so it'll be a good weekend with the boys. My fiance Haley, she's going on a bachelorette. It's like peak boys weekend. We're starting it off with a Q&A for you guys.
There you go.
Ready to dive in?
Ready to dive in.
Cool. Hit me with that first question, Jake.
So the first question we have here is, how long should my workouts take?
I love a good ambiguity-based question. So there's a few ways to take this question and a few ways to look at it. First, I would say it's really important to understand what is your goal, because understanding what it is you're training for is going to dictate how much training you need to be doing. If you're training for a marathon, you're going to need to spend a little bit more time running. If you're training for an Ironman, you're going to need to spend more time working out. If you're training for aesthetics, but at the same time, you're really focusing on getting enough volume for your chest, your arms, your shoulders, your glutes, you're going to need to make sure that you're getting 10 to 20 hard sets a week for that muscle group. And so then you divide that over the course of your days. And that's where you can really start to understand, okay, how many days should I be working out? And if I am working out 3 days a week because I'm super busy, your workouts are probably going to be a little bit longer, closer to the 60, 75, maybe even 90-minute range. If you're just focusing on longevity or focusing on overall health, not trying to do anything crazy from a performance standpoint, from an aesthetic standpoint, I'd say 30 to 40 minutes. And with that, really make sure that in those 30 to 40 minutes, you're just focusing on the biggest compound exercises that you can do. So when we program for people, you're going to have anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes of a dynamic warm-up. Then you go right into your big main compound lift. Get that knocked out, maybe 1 or 2 more big compound or accessory lifts for that. And then if someone's really running low on time and they got to scoot and they got to run into a meeting or something, as long as you're doing that, you're going to be good. If you are in a gym and let's say someone is using your equipment, now that's another thing where if you're training to get better at your squat, you need to wait and find some way to squat. If someone, again, is just focused on overall health and someone's in the squat rack, well, this is where we have our exercise selection blueprint that we give all of our clients and would be more than happy to give anyone in the Facebook group. But ultimately, you just got to say, okay, I'm supposed to do a big, heavy squat. The squat rack's taken. What can I do instead? Okay, I can go do a leg press. Oh, leg press is taken. What could I do instead? Oh, a really heavy goblet squat. Oh, goblet squat's taken. What could I go and do? Oh, I could do a landmine hack squat. And at that point, you're just making quick decisions and solving problems rather than complaining or not having solutions for what is really a simple solution. And you ultimately are going to have a faster workout when you can just know exactly what you need to go to. And that's part of what we teach in the E4 Fit method. And so I think that is kind of like my overarching way to think about that in terms of how long should your workouts take. They should be as fast as they can be effective in a way to kind of tie it to the podcast we did previously with the Tim Ferriss book, 4-Hour Workweek.
Yeah. And I think that too often people tend to be too ambitious with their plans for a workout. You know, you want to work out for an hour and a half, whereas 45 minutes is really, if you're going to be at the gym 3 or 4 times a week, is about all you need. And especially if you consider doing things to maximize your time, like doing supersets, doing exercises essentially back to back that hopefully work different muscle groups, because that's going to make it a little bit easier and more effective, but trying to make the most out of your time. And on top of that, I would say even challenge yourself to, I guess, audit your time at the gym and seeing how much time are you spending on your phone? How much time are you spending walking around, getting a drink? Yes, you want to rest enough in between sets, but I think that there can also be a point where you're just kind of wasting too much time and not making the most of it. So trying to keep in mind that there is not a necessity to work out for X amount of hours or minutes for a workout. It's just trying to get in and be effective and get out for a lot of the times.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you called that out. The amount of time you spend on your phone could cut your workout 20, 30%. All of your rest periods should have timers on them so that as soon as that 2 minutes is up, bing, you're going again. And that's one way to really make sure that you're being efficient there as well.
Yeah. I know, like for me, if I get on my phone, I can spend 5 minutes in between two sets of squat as opposed to two or 3 minutes, which is what I'm supposed to be doing because it can just kind of blow by like that.
Oh yeah. And then you're the Willie that's on his phone in the squat rack that I was so mad at 2 or 3 weeks ago. Because in the matter of 20 minutes, I don't think he did a one hip thrust, but he probably liked 7 tweets. So good for that dude. All right. Next question. How do I breathe for the deadlift? It's another one that's got a lot of context.
Yeah. So as far as breathing for the deadlift, it's important to really try to breathe into your stomach. And that's counterintuitive for a lot of people because most of the time, if you're not paying attention to it, you're breathing into your chest. And it's going to make you a lot more stable, especially in your core, if you focus on breathing deeply into your stomach. And what I try to do too is holding that throughout the deadlift. So taking a nice, strong, deep breath, holding it in, lifting and letting that go when you're at the bottom of the movement. Sometimes you'll see people, if you're really trying to do a heavy lift, if you see someone letting their breath out while they're trying to complete the lift, that's often going to lead to failure or at least a lot of destabilization. So the most important thing is just number one, consider breathing into your belly and holding that breath throughout the lift to stay strong and stay tight in your core.
Yeah, there's 2 ways I like to think about this, and it's one, you want to maintain that intra-abdominal pressure at all times. As soon as you lose that, you lose stability. The 2 ways that you can really do that is you breathe in right before you go and execute the lift, exhale like 1% of your breath, and keep that air in and have everything braced and keep everything tight as you go through the entire movement. When you set the weight back down, or let's say when you're doing an RDL, when you get all the way back up to the top, then you can rebreathe. The other way you can do this is a leaky tire sound. And I don't want to do it into the podcast, but it's basically blowing out a really small straw and creating the sound of a tire being popped and slowly letting air out. And it is losing some of the air in your intra-abdominal cavity, yes, but you are also maintaining the pressure of your deeper core muscles around your spine. So you're going to be fine. Again, then you would rebreathe at the top. Or if you're doing 1 to 5, kind of depends on how long you can hold your breath. But if you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reps, you might be able to hold your breath for the entire set. Kind of just depends on how many reps you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an important point too, so I guess the biggest point I was trying to make there was just don't make it so that you're blowing all your breath out at once, like letting it all out. There's kind of 2 schools of thought and 2 ways that I'll use personally too is holding that breath throughout the movement or using your breath to push as you're pushing out. I guess it's kind of easier to envision on something like a bench press, but as you're pushing up, letting that breath out too can kind of be a catalyst to help execute your strength and execute the movement.
Yep, absolutely.
But cool. the biggest takeaway just being really be mindful of breathing deeply into your belly and keeping that tight core. That's going to be something that has really high returns.
Yeah. And we got a couple YouTube videos too that demonstrate this very clearly. It's one of the most watched videos we have on our channel. So if you're in the Facebook group, join the Mindful Muscle Facebook group, ask for the video, we'll send it to you and you can get a visual of it. Cool. Next question. We're burning through these. Are there things that I should eliminate from my diet? I love these. People are crushing these ones. So I'll let you take this one first, but I got a few thoughts on this.
So I would say it requires a little bit of context, obviously, as any question does. But for the most part, I think what someone's trying to get at here is there any bad foods? Is there any unhealthy foods that I shouldn't be eating? And the simple answer for that is no. There's no foods that you should avoid at all times because no food in moderation is going to have any negative health effects, whether that's sugar, whether that's processed carbs, whatever. Yes, some of those things are sometimes seen as unhealthy because they're easier to overconsume, but by themselves, they're not going to cause any negative effects. And eliminating certain foods from your diet often causes a really just unhealthy relationship with food. So keeping that mindset of I can have anything I want because nothing is inherently unhealthy in and of itself is a good way to just promote consistency and adherence in your diet.
Yeah. That's the third of three things that I put down when I saw this question, just the belief that foods are bad. The other two that I would say that you should eliminate as much as you can is complexity and having these big elaborate meals or always eating out or always overthinking the
Mm-hmm.
very small minutia. Is there a time to really dial in the food quality, or is it grass fed, or where are these eggs from? Yes, absolutely. But if you're under eating or overeating and that's causing a lot of obesity, being overweight to a point to where it's really unhealthy, or you're under eating and you're really doing damage to your overall metabolic health, then that's the first thing that you should solve for, because that's a bigger rock. When you clean those up, then things like, is sugar bad? Like something like, is sugar bad, is really kind of one of those things where it depends. Are you insulin sensitive? Are you diabetic? Are you pre-diabetic? Do you know from a blood test or from a doctor that you need to bring your sugar down? If you're just walking around for the most part pretty healthy and you're overthinking how much sugar does this have, I got news for you. Every single carb gets broken down and turns into the same form of sugar in your bloodstream. So overthinking, is it organic? Is it not organic? Solve for the biggest thing first and kind of remove that complexity. And then to that point, if you know that you are allergic to dairy, or if you know that you are gluten intolerant, or you know that you struggle with alcohol and you're potentially alcoholic, yeah, eliminate that from your diet, because
Mm-hmm.
that can have huge impacts on your health, some things that you may never recover from. So I think that's where it's definitely it depends situation. But in terms of food being bad or unhealthy, don't worry about that until you know that something is really bad. And then if you know something's bad, eliminate it. There's no reason to keep damaging your body if you know that something's bad. At that point, you're just being dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point too. I think that one of the things that people could benefit from is something I try to implement in my own life is try to just think of a dozen, maybe to 2 dozen foods that you really like that you can eat all the time. You can combine into different meals. Um, it's so easy, like you said, to get caught up in, oh, I want to vary the tastes and textures and consistencies of my meal. And that can be fun sometimes. But when you find foods that are agreeable to your body, just in terms of how you digest them, have the macronutrients you want, you know how to cook them, you know where to get them, you know how to portion them, that is going to do so much for you. And I think that that's something that can kind of be overlooked in the puzzle of macros and calories, which of course that works. But a lot of times it's just going to be easier to really stick to the things that work for you, that that are going to provide you with some consistency.
Yeah, the need for novelty is really just the death of consistency. And you can see it across every single pillar in life. If you need to have 5 people that you're dating at the same time, how are you ever supposed to build a good relationship? If you need 10 cryptos that you're day trading every single day, how are you ever supposed to build wealth? If you got 5 side hustles, how are you ever supposed to build a business? Same thing with nutrition. If every day you're like, oh, I got to have a brand new meal I've never had and I got to eat out. I used to do this when I was at Amazon. I would think, oh, I haven't had this for lunch. And I would have to go to all these different restaurants around the area to have novelty. And it just made things harder for me. It was, at the end of the day, just have something similar that is easy to track, that checks the boxes. And it's okay for food to be transactional, because it makes the special moments with friends, with family, weddings, whatever it is, more special. But if every night is a 5-star restaurant, who cares?
Yeah. And I think that another consideration here is kind of like you said, with what makes you go overboard. So some people have a fine time with desserts, if that's your thing, if some sort of like a salty treat, chips, something like that is your thing. If you can have that and moderate it, that's fine. But also know that there can be some benefit and merit to eliminating certain foods to a large extent. If you just have one chip and you can't help but eat the whole bag, or if you have one scoop of ice cream and you can't help but have 3 or 4 scoops. and again, like it's not that it has to be eliminated in total, but if you struggle with limiting yourself around certain foods, that can be a good thing to eliminate just to make things easier on yourself.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. Cool. Last question, Jake. Hit me with it.
So the last question is there any pieces of equipment, of gym equipment that you recommend? And I like this one. I actually just made a reel about this last week because there's a few pieces of equipment that I use really frequently. And number one, and probably my favorite, is the squat shoes. And those are essentially just shoes that have a larger heel, give you some support in the heel. And where those are helpful is if you're someone like me who your legs are a lot longer than your torso, you're not someone who is necessarily as built mechanically for the squat. The person who is most built for the squat is someone who's going to have short legs and a long torso, because you can essentially just sit straight down and sit straight up. Your body is very much made for it. If you have longer legs, having those squat shoes is going to be a good way to help you get into a deeper position and help your squat just feel a lot smoother. You won't have to do as much bending and adjusting your body to the squat. You're going to be more primed and in a good position. The other two that I use really frequently, I have an Inzer belt. Those are really nice. I tried a few different belts throughout the course of the last few years, and this is the one I've liked the most because it's really easy. It's really sturdy. We talked about breathing for the deadlift specifically. Breathing for lifts is made a lot easier with something. Well, I guess that core contraction is made a lot easier with something like a belt. Something that people don't realize is that belts are not so much made to help you stay injury free. That's kind of the thinking around a belt. Belts are essentially just to help you brace harder in your core, and that's going to help you lift more and lift more safely. But they're not something that, if you're not focused on how to use it correctly, is just going to inherently help you from injury. A belt is just going to help you to, when you're breathing in, keep that core nice and tight, keep a good strong breath. And so that's what I like a belt for. I wear a belt about half the time when I'm either deadlifting or squatting or doing some iteration of those things. And then the last thing, probably the least important out of the three, but still very helpful, are wrist straps. And that's something we talked about before. When your grip becomes the limiting factor, in the most obvious thing is rows, anything where you're doing a pulling motion, but also if you're holding onto a bar for lunges, other stuff like that, where you're holding weight for an extended period of time, wrist straps can help there too. So those are my three favorite pieces of equipment that I think just about anybody could benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all needs in a gym bag. But the other thing I would think through is, what is it that you're really optimizing for? And so I'll offer another perspective. If you're a runner, piece of equipment that you need is running shoes. If you are going into a gym, don't wear those running shoes into the gym. Those are shoes for running. You're going to have a really hard time staying injury free or lifting and doing leg work if you got big Brooks on and your feet are basically getting soaked into this big bubble.
Mm-hmm.
The other couple things that I'd say would be helpful, whether ladies or fellas, and you're doing hip thrusts, and if your gym doesn't have a hip thrust pad, get yourself a hip thrust pad. I think that's a really easy one to just throw in a bag and have with you and be able to knock out hip thrusts. That's going to be something that's going to save a lot of pain in the hip area. And then the other one that I would say is, if you don't have strength bands, get those ASAP. Not every gym has bands for pull aparts, face pulls, a lot of the stuff that we do for dynamic effort work, or not dynamic, but dynamic warm up work to get people warmed up and ready to go and work out. You should have some form of band that you're taking to the gym so that you can prep your rear shoulder stabilizers, prep your hips. So whether that's mini bands, or booty bands is what they'll sometimes be called. Strength bands are the full loops. I got mine right here, where it's basically just a full loop. Giant Lifting, Rogue, a lot of these companies are going to have great options for you. Bands that won't break, because it sucks when bands break. And then bands with handles, I'd say, are the least important ones. But if you're building out a home gym and you need those, I think those are a great option as well. But having all three of those is going to be important. So booty bands, strength bands, and resistance bands with handles.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that I was thinking of in the context of my answer is, and I guess this is so with any equipment, but you don't want to become too reliant on equipment either, because if you can't get into a squat rack and squat without a belt, you have to have that belt. You're probably not going to have all the stabilization that you want in your body, and you're going to make it easier to get injured in something like playing basketball and just going and doing something active. You want to, like I said, about half the time I'm using my belt, my wrist strap, stuff like that. Because the other half of the time, I just want to practice using my body without any equipment so that I'm prepared for, I like to go hiking. I like to play golf. I like to do all these different things. And if you are constantly having to rely and lean on equipment, that's almost just as bad as not ever taking advantage of equipment either. So you have to look at it from both angles there. Yes, it can help you to improve and get stronger and push your limits, but don't make that the thing that you're doing 100% of the time, because you want to be able to use your body functionally too.
Yeah. And to double back down on the shoes thing too, I was just thinking through this because I like to go downstairs and play basketball in my gym. I have basketball shoes, I have lifting shoes, I have running shoes, I have golfing shoes. If I tap dance, I'd have tap dancing shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like, oh, that's so much money, or that's a lot of shoes to have. Could you even bring all those shoes in your bag? I would say, yeah, because the number one thing that's going to injure you is likely going to be the wrong shoes. And
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what sport you're playing, or if you're weightlifting, or if you're running, your feet is the number one point of contact for the ground. And as soon as you start that kinetic chain off on the wrong foot, you're just asking for ankle issues, knee issues, hip issues. Then you're going to end up in the physical therapist office. Then you're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars fixing an issue that would have been cleaned up had you had proper shoes on. Make sure you got the right shoes for the activity. I think that's the last thing I would say with that.
Yeah. And I like to even train barefoot every now and then, just because it's shoes can, I mean, this is kind of a minutia thing, but training barefoot can kind of help strengthen some of the muscles in your foot that aren't really getting work very often. And just doing that from time to time, even if it's once a month, I feel like can help with your mobility, with your stability in different lifts. And so that's something I like to work in here and there, just when I think about it too.
Yeah. Or go out in the park with a couple kettlebells, or in your
Yeah, even
backyard
better.
with some weights, and just do an outdoor workout and
Mm-hmm.
get some sun and some vitamin D and get dirty and get the grounding effect from the earth. And all of a sudden you're, one with the land. It's awesome. That's all I got, man. We hit those 4 questions pretty good, pretty quick.
Yeah, we zipped through it today.
Cool.
But yeah, I think it was always good information, and it's always fun to kind of sift through this stuff with you, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple housekeeping things. The 30-day challenge is going to start on April 11th. So if you have not signed up, the Mindful Muscle 30-day challenge is going to give you access to a lot of things. 30 days of training in our E4 Fit app, where you're going to have a done for you workout program. You're going to have access to the Mindful Muscle mini course. I just finished filming that. It is literally all of my best trainings done in a very professional lighting. Alex went through and updated and edited it all. It looks really good. So really happy with how that turned out. You're also going to get 6 different recipe books. Not that you need to go and use all of those, because again, novelty and complexity is the bane of good nutrition sometimes, but you're going to get ideas from that. And one of them is actually a 5 ingredients or less recipe book. So really right in line with what we were talking about. You're going to get access to obviously the Mindful Muscle Facebook group and be able to join our Atomic Fitness Habit Live Challenge calls that Jake's going to be taking us through, basically taking atomic habits, putting that through the lens of fitness and how you can apply that yourself. Oh, and then you're also going to get bonus programs: Down Dog Athletics Functional Flow, Yoga for Runners, Hit at Home, Core Crushers, all stuff that's filmed and done for you, so that if you're traveling on the go, limited equipment, you've got resources for you. And so I will say, just as a warning, it is $7. It is 23 cents a day. But if you can swing that and give up a beer for the next 30 days, you'll be super pumped with everything that you get in it. And I think it'd be something that lays a really good foundation for you moving forward. So definitely sign up for that. That link's going to be in the description. And then one last housekeeping thing. Got to thank our friends from Fuller NutriFuel. I'm actually meeting with them today to collaborate on some big projects that we got coming up. But you can use my discount code Paul15 to get 15% off your food delivered to your door. So meal prep service delivered to your door every Sunday and Wednesday. And they're delicious, they're nutritious, and that is not fictitious. And that's all I got for today on the Mindful Muscle podcast. Justin Thomas is going to win the Masters. I called it, and we'll catch you guys next time on the Mindful Muscle podcast. Jake, thanks for jumping on with me, and we'll see you guys all on Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Later.